Here is some nuclear energy truth for you guys. What a crazy week again. Let's get into the price action. First, North Shore Global URNM mining ETF, guys, pumping 11% over the last 5 days. Last week, I talked about there being a melt up in the uranium price. Guys, look at the uranium spot price over the last few weeks. It literally, I think, March 7th to March 10th went from $51 to $60. That is huge. You could argue that the melt up has begun. Look at how uranium stocks have diverged from the broader market. Again, URNM up 11%. Look at the S&P 500 down 3%, guys. This is a divergence broadly, it seems, in all commodity stocks, similar to the 1970s, where you had massive pumps in commodity stocks and the broader market crashed. It could be happening. I have an interview coming out with Michael Oliver. He lays out the framework for why that'll be the case. And so if that happens, it's very bullish for all commodity stocks, including uranium. But uranium is even more specialized, even more bullish because the fundamentals are unbelievable. And I'm going to walk through all the news that happened this week, which proves that out, guys. First of all, you have this report out of Fox Business saying Russia-Ukraine war may increase support for nuclear energy despite power plant scares. Okay, so we're going to get into those power plant scares for sure, because that is a big kind of narrative. And we're going to see if there's any truth to that, right? The Russia-Ukraine war is renewing focus on energy security in the West, including the role nuclear power can play in that. People realize that nuclear can play a really valuable role in energy security. We have bipartisan support, and that's saying something for DC. There's not a lot of things that get bipartisan support. Nuclear power does. If you look at the infrastructure package that was passed last October, there were some really key things in there for nuclear power. What's maybe not discussed as much as the fact that nuclear has good paying jobs. Not only do you need that carbon-free power, and nuclear has it round the clock, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, unlike renewables that are intermittent, right? It also brings those good jobs to these local communities. She added, when you close those coal plants, we'll put a small modular reactor where the coal plant was, and you can reuse the infrastructure and bring life back into these communities that were previously heavily invested in coal and natural gas. And so that kind of summarizes the bullish narrative for US-based miners, like Energy Fuels and other North American miners. But so let's get into this other narrative, which is a negative, which is that there's a nuclear power plant scare in Chernobyl, right? And the fear mongering about this is that the power supply to Chernobyl is going to go offline, and therefore you're not going to be able to cool the nuclear waste that is in Chernobyl, right? So let's look at this article. Chernobyl power supply cut, but IAEA says no imminent safety threat. The nuclear energy company I don't know how to say that, said emergency diesel generators are switched on at the site to supply power to safety critical systems. In case of trouble-free operation, the stock of diesel fuel and diesel generators will be enough for 48 hours. Ukraine's foreign minister said cooling systems of the storage facility for spent nuclear fuel will stop making radiation leaks imminent. This is what everyone was afraid of, but the International Atomic Energy Agency said that there is enough water in the spent fuel pools for the fuel rods to cool sufficiently to avoid an accident. The spent fuel had cooled down enough since 1986 that the pool is sufficient to maintain effective heat removal without the need for electrical supplies. A co-director of the nuclear policy program at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace said it is extremely unlikely that spent fuel pools there will empty because of evaporation. This process is slow and mitigation should be straightforward. So everyone fear-mongering about this was unfortunately misinformed. There isn't as much of a risk according to these experts. And so we get to now focus on the nuclear renaissance that's happening and the widespread global adoption and investment going on. Guys, first of all, US ban on Russian energy imports does not include uranium. Why do you guys think that is? It's because we're desperate for uranium. And if we do that, this melt up is going to continue even more if we do ban uranium. But it just goes to show that as much as we want to sanction Russia on everything, we can't, right? Because we're desperate for their uranium supply. So this just lights a fire and incentivizes all countries around the world to invest in more uranium supply. Saudi Arabia confirms holding company to develop nuclear facilities, atomic industry. We know Saudi Arabia is the oil producing juggernaut in the world. That's what they're known for. They're using their profits from oil to invest in nuclear energy. That should tell you just about everything you need to know about where things are going. Finland starts much delayed nuclear power plant, brings respite to the power market. The OL3 significantly improves Finland's electricity self-sufficiency and helps in achieving carbon neutrality goals. Once fully operational, it is expected to meet 14% of Finland's electricity demand, reducing the need for imports from Russia, Sweden, and Norway. Clearly, they get it, and clearly most other countries are getting it. Philippines relaunches nuclear energy program. The president has signed an executive order that outlines the government's position for the inclusion of nuclear energy in the Philippines energy mix, taking into account economic, political, social, and environmental objectives. Nuclear energy generation solves a lot of these problems because it takes away this energy scare. Over time, it's cheap because uranium fuel over time should be less expensive, obviously, and much more energy dense than fossil fuels. And so you guys can see a nuclear renaissance forming countries around the world. We've talked about Europe. We've talked about Germany. We've talked about France, obviously the United States. You can see globally a nuclear renaissance is occurring. Countries around the world realize that they have to invest in uranium. Finland totally gets it. They're bordering Russia. And so everyone is going big onto this. The supply is constrained. It's a fact that there's a supply deficit and it's been underinvested in. We've been saying for a year that the uranium price has to pump in order to incentivize mine supply. And the price is now pumping, and uranium stocks are also pumping. And as it pumps, we're going to start to see more and more uranium producers start to develop plans to put their mines into action. Unfortunately, it takes months, if not years, to get this stuff back online. So we're going to be stuck with a supply-demand deficit for months at this point. So as the bullish demand drivers unfold and more countries start to invest in the space, it's going to take a lot of time to get the supply needed back onto the market. And don't take my word for it. Every uranium CEO that we've talked to, but also any other ones around the world, know there's a supply problem, that it's going to take months, if not years, to get it back online. So in the meantime, the melt up continues. Nothing goes up in a straight line, but I can't put it any better than Elon Musk, who's one of the world's smartest men, if not the smartest man in the entire world. Elon Musk. Hopefully it is now extremely obvious that Europe should restart dormant nuclear power stations and increase power output of existing ones. This is critical, with asterisks, to national and international security. For those who mistakenly think that this is a radiation risk, pick what you think is the worst location. I will travel there and eat locally grown food on TV. I did this in Japan many years ago, shortly after Fukushima. Radiation risk is much, much lower than most people believe. Also, nuclear is vastly better for global warming than burning hydrocarbons for energy. I cannot wait to bring you guys more information as the bullish renaissance in the nuclear energy industry unfolds and the uranium mining infrastructure starts to get built out and investment just floods into this space. This discussion is for informational purposes only. Please consult a certified financial planner when making any decisions about investing. And do your own research before making any decisions. Investments are risky and you can lose lots of money in them.